Hi there, Arian here from the Urban Phoenix. How are you? I've been looking to kind of do some very informal videos. As you see, I'm just at my desk here in my apartment in a t-shirt. I want to do a series of informal videos where, I can kind of talk and communicate verbally some of the issues I talk about on my blog. It's really easy, I found, to read about the issues that we talk about that affect our urban communities and form our own opinions as we're reading or have gut reactions as we're reading. Sometimes it takes, sometimes we respond to things differently when we see someone talk to us, when we see someone communicate directly to us. And, I just wanted to try this and see if this is something that would work. And the thing that I want to talk about first here is the idea of transit in our communities. And I know a lot of people roll their eyes when they hear about transit. Oh my gosh, dude, constantly talking about transit. Is this reurbanization? And it deals with bike lanes and buses and bus rapid transit and light rail and that. And I want to tell you, I want to talk to you about kind of why transit is so important to a city. Um, we're all looking for ways to combat poverty in our cities. And listen, transit is about many different things, but the key piece of transit is this. I like to think of what transit does, as it's a game changer. It levels the playing field. Transit gives people of all socioeconomic statuses and walks of life. This is adequate transit. This is good transit. Gives all people, no matter what their income or level of education, an opportunity to get to where they need to go, most notably to jobs. That's what a good transit system allows communities to do. It gives the person who is making, $20,000 to $25,000 a year, is more opportunities and kind of puts them on a closer level to the people that are making $50 to $100,000 and above. If people can get to where they're going in a relatively reasonable and consistent amount of time with consistent frequency, the playing field is leveled across our community. The problem is, in cities like Rochester that are built so almost exclusively for automobile travel with very little emphasis on public transit, you have a huge percentage of our population that literally can't get to jobs in a timely or reliable manner, or at all. Something came out recently in a city like Rochester, cities like Rochester, that in cities like this of our similar population, about 10% of jobs in our community, in communities like ours, can be reached within 1 hour travel on transit. Think about that for a second. Even if you had to go, 10 miles, sometimes on bus from where I am, that's going to take me almost an hour and a half on transit. In many times, in many situations, many cases, it's not possible at all. Even just to go 10, 15 miles, I can't access that job by transit. So what we don't realize, we like to think of upward mobility and everyone can just pick themselves up. If people are not, if there's a huge percentage of the jobs out there in our community that are literally not accessible to 20, 30% of our population, how can we do that? How can we have upward mobility? How can we do that if you can't even start? I like to look at it this way. Imagine you had a population of people that lived all in the same area. And that same population of people, this is really simplifying it, and that same population of people worked all at the same location. So there was literally every morning, every day, everyone from over here, from point A, where everyone lives, woke up and they take one mode of transportation over to point B where they work. Okay, so imagine there's one place where people live and one place where people work. Now imagine that 30% of the population, um, imagine that 30% of the population could do this without problem, without any issue, without any financial strain. Okay, so they could, wake up and get in, and take that mode of transportation, and it wouldn't be a problem at all. It would not be a financial issue for them. Maybe these are the people that are CEOs in the company or something like that. Maybe they're high up management, whatever. So imagine then that there's another 30%, or let's say 40%, just for saying, of the population that, they're kind of, middle of the road. They're just the workers, but they still make a decent salary, enough where getting from point A to point B, getting from where they live to where they work is, a little bit of a financial strain, but they can get by and they're okay. It's not too bad. It's not terrible, and they're willing to do it because hey, it's employment. They need a job, right? They need to be there. Now imagine that last 30% of people living in that point A, the place where everyone lives, literally cannot afford that one method of transit um, in between point A and point B, in between where they live and where they work. That means 30% of the population can't access that job. And the other 70% is sitting there going, well, why don't you just I don't know, pick yourselves up, dust yourself off, find a way to do it. Hey, pull yourself up by your bootstraps, American ingenuity, blah 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 blah. You know what? If you can't get to work, you can't do that. Upward mobility, nothing. If you can't get to jobs, if you can't afford the transit that gets you there, if you can't afford a car that gets you, that is really the only way to access the jobs that we have in our community for the most part in a reliable manner, if you can't afford that, then there's no way of changing the game for yourself. And that's something that it's very, very easy to overlook when we talk about transit. When we talk about transit, I think so many people think it's just getting around our cities and going from one bar to another. That has nothing or very little to do with it. Good transit levels the playing field for people across socioeconomic statuses, and it says it gives basically poor people in our community a fighting chance to get to access the jobs they need so that they can pick themselves up and kind of realize this American dream, which is slowly and methodically losing credibility. That is what true transit does, and that's why people like myself, people all over this community, and people across this country are really starting to speak up and say, if we want to improve our communities, if we want to bring more people to the table, we have to think about transit and what transit does and the implications for not having transit, what that does for our community. It isolates and insulates our poorer populations and creates a level of hopelessness and completely negates anyone's ability to move up the ladder and to improve their situation. Lack of access to jobs, lack of access to education is a huge, huge problem in our community in Rochester and beyond. We have to attack these problems, and this is why we're advocating so fervently for increased transit in our nation. I think this is a really, really important subject that we all need to become more aware of. Thank you so much for watching today, guys. Hope this is very informative. Give me your feedback. Love to hear back. Check out the Urban Phoenix. A lot of good stuff coming down the pipe. Talk to you soon. Bye bye.